Sounds like a dignified thing to do.
Honestly, like rice bowls are like my favorite like bowl brewing
Mm-hmm.
vessels because they're like the perfect size.
Yep. Yeah,
Hi,
it's a
Plastic
good
Patty.
size. You
No, the
basically
absolute perfect size.
you basically just want like a wide mouth and
Sure.
small in size. So yeah, soup bowls do a great job of that.
I know somebody who will use just a rice bowl as like their actual cup. But all right, shall we get started?
Let's do this.
Cool. Well, welcome to another episode of The First Steep. As usual, my name is Colin. Online I go as Baka. I'm a content creator that has a caffeine addiction. I mean, enjoys tea. And we've been away for a couple weeks for our live recording of this podcast, but I'm happy to be back. And as always, I'm joined by Elise. If you
Hi.
wanna...
Nice to meet everybody. My name is Elise. I am the founder and CEO of Tealet. It is a B2B marketplace that facilitates direct trade between independent family-owned tea growers and tea business buyers. So yeah, I'm also a fan of the leaf and happy to be back after the holidays, after the new
Mhm.
year, to record some more live episodes. And yeah, Colin, you said we have some good news about our podcast. What's going on with that?
I've got. We're going to be able to start releasing episodes within about a couple weeks here because I've got some things done. I'm literally just like adding. I've got several episodes edited. I'm just literally adding like some intros and outros at the beginning and end so that they look professional.
Wait, we don't look professional, Colin?
Sometimes, but yeah, it's just taken me a while to get down to editing them. I definitely like was over editing them, and have recently tried to go back and take a much more organic approach to it because I realized that I was trying to like control everything when the whole point of this podcast was that it's a little bit more free flowing kind of conversation. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
figured there wasn't really a whole lot of purpose in like trying to make sure that it was like perfectly edited, But
Well, that's good to
so
hear. Yeah, yeah. I like to just hack it together. That's my
yeah.
style. So,
Now, like I'll cut this part out of this episode when it gets released because it won't be relevant to that.
mm-hmm.
But other than that,
Yeah, cool. Well,
um,
yeah, just to let our viewers know the structure of what's going
sure.
on today. This is a live recording, so we won't be interrupting throughout the recording part to answer your questions, although we do welcome your live questions and your live interactions in the chat. We are
Not that we
streaming.
won't answer them.
We will answer them eventually, but
Yes.
just be patient with us if we don't reply to you right away. But Colin
Mm.
and I, what we do in this series is we taste two different teas in parallel. These teas will either have something in common, have something in contrast, or have something that complements each other. So sometimes it's drinking two teas from the same origin, or drinking two teas that are processed very differently, or processed similarly from different terroirs, so that we can better understand about tea. So today we are exploring the origin of Nepal with a beautiful white tea called White Forest, coming from the Barbote um, tea factory in Ilam, Nepal. And literally just the next village over is the baby amber red that is coming from the Hariali cooperative in the village of Jazzberry, which is literally just a little jaunt up the road. So very similar origins, very different teas. So yeah, we should have fun today, Colin.
Yeah, and I was really excited to notice these in the box when I opened them. I was really excited that you said that we should have these because Nepal has been one of the most fascinating New World tea countries
Yeah.
that I feel like I've come across. And I think, and I know we'll get into this because I know just enough about the White Forest to know what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited to get into it because Nepal, for many reasons, I think is so cool because none of their tea really a lot of the tea doesn't really fit with other regions and styles and stuff. And I'm kind of it's always kind of fascinating to open a new tea from Nepal because it's kind of going to be something that you might not really have encountered before in terms of specific style. So I'm excited to kind of get into these. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So Nepal, as you said, is a new world. I think that's a really great descriptor word. I've never really heard anybody else use it, but I started using it, and
I picked it up from you and somebody else that
yeah,
I
I
drink
think
tea with sometimes on the
other
internet.
people have started. I mean, it's not like it was rocket science to come up with that word. It's very
Well,
similar in
right,
the wine world. But yeah, new world in the sense of specialty handcrafted teas coming from new origins. Traditionally, handcrafted teas, artisanal teas, are coming from China, Taiwan, and Japan. So it is exciting to see more and more regions, including India and Sri Lanka, as well as some places in Africa. But Nepal is probably the most uniquely positioned, and that's just because of economic necessity. Like when tea was planted in Nepal, it was planted as a cash crop, aggressively planted as a cash crop, which is a very common story for a lot of the origins that we've talked about on this podcast. And the market did not support a sustainable growth of the industry, and
sure.
Nepal was hit fastest and hardest by that. And so the small tea growers that have between the co-ops and the independent small tea growers, which these are two, one of the teas is coming from a co-op and the other is coming from an independent small grower. Both of them have had to resort to very innovative thinking and innovative tea processing techniques to differentiate their tea and make their tea more competitive, because really the only other option that tea producers in Nepal have is supplying their tea to Indian traders who will then label it as Darjeeling tea, which is a really
Right.
common thing that you hear about in trade industry news, because there's just high abundance of Darjeeling tea for what is capable of being produced in that region. So, they're just
I think I
backing.
believe reading about like I want to say maybe in the 80s or 90s Nepal like almost single-handedly saving the Darjeeling tea industry
Hmm.
just because of supplying them with Darjeeling tea, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So that's continuing to happen as well now. That
Sure.
this supply from Nepal is sustaining the market, which is
I mean
great for
it's
the.
right there.
Yeah, it's right there. I mean, they're pretty much the same place. I mean, there's some places, some tea gardens that you go to. One step and you're in Darjeeling, and the other step you're in India, and the other step you're in Nepal. They're
Sure.
very very close. Logistically, they're not very close, and so that's a challenge with exporting from Nepal, unless you're working through one of these large tea trading organizations in India that has these infrastructures set up for moving supply between the two countries. It is actually very challenging to export tea from Nepal, and just to move about in Nepal.
Is
And
that because of how mountainous it is?
it is, yeah,
Yeah.
They say it's something like 96% mountains. So they say, oh, it's just 10 kilometers down the road, but it's
It's
you
going
know,
to be a 3-hour drive.
yeah.
See, but and I know that. So I've done some research on Nepal in the past, and by research I mean I've like read some stuff on the internet.
Okay.
So like let's take that word lightly. And what I mean by that is that like I know that like historically because of all those mountains, Nepal has been really isolated.
Hmm.
From a lot of surrounding political influence, I guess. Like they've had a lot of outside political influence, but
Hmm.
they've isolated themselves very severely
Yeah.
politically from surrounding
Well,
countries in the
yeah,
past.
the story of Darjeeling itself is like the prime example of that, of
Sure.
how, Darjeeling was the last stronghold that the British colonizers were able to hold down. The Nepalese army was the only one to successfully hold back the British army during the time of colonization. So yeah, they
Hmm.
isolated themselves, but now there's this weird reverse thing that's happened, that because they've isolated themselves and have remained autonomous, which is wonderful for their culture, wonderful for
Sure.
their well-being. In that sense, infrastructure wise, it is just like night and day when it comes to being in Darjeeling versus being in Nepal. In Darjeeling, they're in India. They have all of the infrastructures that the Indian government provides that is actually very different than Nepal. Nepal,
Hmm.
doesn't have as much, stable business infrastructure, transportation infrastructure that the country of India has. So, although, there's a lot to be celebrated in Nepal's autonomy that it's been able to maintain, there's some challenges in the whole conversation of Gorkha land, which is Darjeeling, and the protests that happened of trying to create their own statehood, separated from West Bengal, which, there's a lot of political and oppression issues going on in that. I had asked the question, since, people of Darjeeling identify and relate, almost family level relations with people in Nepal. I said, well, would you want to become part of Nepal? And they're like, well, Nepal probably doesn't want us to become a part of them, because then they would be gaining this very powerful state that has benefited from being a part of India.
Hmm.
So, yeah, like it's a very interesting area of the world. But yeah, I think we should start brewing these teas. Get
Yeah,
some
I was about
drinking.
to say we've been sitting here
I could
talking.
talk
And
all
I
day.
really want to drink tea.
I could talk all day. Actually, I haven't watched the movie, so I can't directly give my recommendation for this, but I heard a good recommendation from someone else that there's a movie on Netflix called 14 Peaks. It's a story or a documentary about a Nepalese man that climbs the top 14 peaks in the world in like 7 months. He's ridiculous. Um,
Wow.
yeah, but supposedly in the movie there is a lot of talk about the culture of Nepal, and so I want to check out that movie. It's next on my list when I get a chance to sit down and actually watch a movie, to see that. But I think if anybody is interested in understanding more about Nepalese culture and history, that could be a cool documentary to check out.
Kettle is loud because I'm doing the white at 80 and the black at 95 because that's how I like to start things.
All right, sounds good. Both of my waters have, or my not both my water, but my water has cooled a little bit. I think I was at like 195, so I think that's a good temp to do this on. And I'm just using the ISO certified cupping sets. Make it easy to do the side by side.
Say before stream started, I was just saying that I'm using these little rice bowls that I have and just spoons and just kind of doing this bowl brew. I've become a lot fonder of this for late night brews, honestly. I feel like it's a little bit less kind of abrasive in terms of the energy at times.
Oops. I am going to steep the white tea for a little less time than the other one.
Oh,
And
I'm
the
just
black tea.
putting water on both. We're like real low ratio here, so I'm not too concerned about my steep time.
I did use a lot of leaf. I didn't weigh it, but I'm pretty sure I used close to 5 grams for this small set.
Maybe have a gram if that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
You want to
Yeah.
save. You're conserving. Smart.
Well, the thing is that like I was saying, is I really liked all my tea from Nepal. So when you send me this, I'm like, oh shit! If I only like use like a little bit now, like we can use this for like later episodes.
Yeah.
Um, because like one thing that like I tea from Nepal and always makes me think like in terms of like the processing and like what I know about it always reminds me of like tea from Korea and stuff. And like I really want to like do side by sides of Nepalese and like Korean teas and stuff to see just kind of like how this processing just kind of relates to each other. So
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I never thought about that comparison.
well, it's just so I just know that like because Korea does not process their tea like anything like in general like Japan and and China do, or Taiwan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that Nepal has some interesting processing standards as well. And I'll let you talk more about that because you know a lot more about that than I do. I just am made aware of it slightly.
Um,
Um,
okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I could
but
talk about that a little bit as we're
but
waiting for this to
that's
steam.
just what I'm getting at. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, the as I said before, the Nepalese industry over the past couple of decades has really transitioned into supporting the Darjeeling industry. So it only makes sense that the conventional way of processing tea in Nepal is just like Darjeeling, which is this lightly oxidized black tea, very
Sure.
flowery, really pulling from the terroir notes of that high elevation, fertile, clean soil that Nepal enjoys or the Himalayas enjoy. But in the case of these two teas, you're going to find this very different because these are two innovative teas.
Mm.
And speaking of trying to do this white forest again on another episode, we certainly could do that, especially if you want to compare it to the kind of the kind of benchmark of where white forest, the OG white forest came from. This is not the OG white forest. This is coming from Barbote
Mm-hmm.
village, which is a brand new processing operation, but one that is operating with the intention of gung fu more so than anybody else that I've seen in Nepal. And there's some privileges involved in why they're able to do that. And so I think it's important to understand that. But we could compare this, which is kind of like what I believe to be the standard of where this style of tea processing should be, because this style of tea processing has become the like high quality Nepalese handcrafted tea style.
Mm-hmm.
Every artisanal tea crafter in Nepal, be large factory or small factory, is making some type of version of this. They may not call it white forest, but something white with somebody's name, or and you probably seen this aesthetic of leaf, of the very young pubescent, slightly rolled
I've got
white
I've
tea.
got one of the versions of this actually in
I'm
my
sure you
cabinet as
do.
well.
So that's what we could do. We could side by side that, so you can
Yeah,
kind of
we could honestly. I've got enough of it.
not to say that that other one is not good, but it's different
Sure.
than this
Yeah.
gold standard. And kind of the oppression that people of Nepal generally face, this infrastructure issue, marketing issue. They're always in the shadow of Darjeeling, so it's really
Mm.
hard for these farmers to get a good price for their tea to be attractive in the international market for the large buyers that support higher prices for their craft. A lot of really great tea styles have been innovated on a small scale, but on like a truly artisanal scale, but then end up getting kind of diluted, in this oppression of trying to make things work within the system you're working within, not being offered good prices, being required to produce huge quantities. That's a limiting factor too. Like, even if they're paying you a good price, if they make you up your production 5 times than what you're usually used to, you're going to start cutting corners to make
Mm.
things work. And so that's what's happened with a lot of the tea artisanship in Nepal. But this tea coming from Barbote village, the owner and operator is retired international development worker that's going back to his grandparents' village to bring dignity back to their tea garden.
Mm.
So the tea bushes themselves, the original planting of tea bushes for the White Forest Garden, is actually one of the first of Nepal. Very old, over 100 years old. But it's only now being used for producing crafted tea. And he's going to take his time. He's not looking to make money right away. He's looking to restore that dignity. So, he's able to resist the temptation of, the what other larger factories kind of have no choice but to do. That's yummy.
It's like a white flour kind of note to it.
I always get such like a rich, thick, like custardiness from it. Like it's a dessert. Like it's a whole ass dessert on its own in this cup.
It's got this like kind of sugary quality to it almost that I feel like you'll only find in a white tea.
But not all white teas.
No, certainly not.
A lot of white teas fall flat on texture, but this one just blooms with it. It's just like...
Say it's thick.
Thick.
With 2 C's.
Exactly. Yeah, great way to describe a tea.
Say I love bowl brewing, though, because I love getting to watch the leaves kind of just sink and open. It's very buddy, though.
So... when you see other styles of tea like this, like I said, pretty much every factory that's, doing direct trade or doing artisanal tea production is making some version of this, because this has become like a standard production
Elise?
style. Yes.
Oh, shit. These are the struggles of recording a podcast in 2 completely separate locations across the United States. Oh, you there?
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had you freeze for just a second too.
These are the struggles of recording a podcast across the United States.
Okay, so yeah, this has become like a standard style of processing tea. And so now when I go to Nepal and go to an event where small growers and factories are welcomed to bring samples for me to try, there's always, one table of just this style of tea. And it's like 70 different ones lined up. And every single...
What is this style of tea, though?
The White Forest.
That's
literally what it's like a Bai Mudan style. It's like their version of Bai Mudan. So it's like lightly rolled. There's a little bit of a roll to it to kind of instigate a very light oxidation to happen. And then it gets dried immediately after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I interrupted you with something, but I was just like...
No, I think we've been fine. I feel like everything's been coherent. But yeah, so this style of tea is just called White Forest. Like that was like the original name given to it. And as far as I know, the batch that I purchased in 2014, which was, the first year that this tea was made available to the market, it was kind of a big deal because I was traveling with another tea buyer who was also very impressed by this tea, who also wanted to buy up whatever was there. That kind of created some buzz around this style of tea, this White Forest, and word spread very quickly. So now everybody is making this style. And yeah, the reason why I brought this up was because when you do those lineups, every single one of these teas, and this is how unique the terroir of Nepal is, has that flowery aroma that you commented on. That was the first thing you commented on, was that flower. It's just intense flower.
This isn't the first tea that you sent me from Nepal, and what's kind of funny to me, I think I've mentioned this to you before actually, is every single time I've had a tea from Nepal, I've opened the pouch, I've taken a big whiff of the contents and gone, it smells like Nepal, because they've all got this very kind of unique, like floral aroma, like we're saying, especially the white teas.
Yeah. Yeah, so you may think differently of the other tea that we'll taste, because like a true heavy oxidation does affect that floweriness. But yeah, getting that flowery aroma is very easy. And so for Nepalese teas, that's become like the signature tasting note. But what I look for when I think to that original batch of White Forest that I fell in love with in 2014, it's this texture. It's that rich custardy sweet texture that no one else can replicate. Like I'll do a lineup and every single one of the teas I'll have to say, I'm sorry y'all, I'm not buying this tea. I'm not going to support this. It's not because I don't want to support you. I feel like if I was to buy this tea and flip it into something that it's not, I'd be doing you more of a disservice than if I was to encourage you to try to get back to this texture. So I went to this village. The owner of this garden, the Barbote village, his name is Gurunji, Narendra Gurung. Gurunji is, very social, very active. He's very smart, too. He's very educated. Like I said, he had his whole own career he's retired from. And he knew reaching out to the international market was going to be key to their success. And so, he's on Facebook. He's befriended a lot of tea bloggers, a lot of people, and started getting this tea out. And he invited me to his village, which very conveniently located near to Jazzberry Village, where this other tea comes from. I spent a lot of time there. So it was very easy for me to go. And I just fell in love. And I was like, this is it. Like, this is what I've been, trying to encourage everybody to have the patience for, to do, because this is a really special cup of tea that, like, no one can deny it. I sell out of it as soon as I get it every single time. It's gone. And it's hard to keep it, because the logistics from Nepal is a challenge. That's definitely a big task that I've been trying to take on, and COVID has not helped with that at all.
I thought COVID would have made everything a lot easier, honestly.
Really?
No.
Okay, good joke.
Speaking of this other tea, though, I have had a couple sips of it, and Holy Milk Chocolate Batman.
Oh, you're talking about the black tea?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, chocolate. That's it. I'm just like, the flour is gone. It's taken over by that creamy chocolate, yeah.
But yeah, it's like that specifically like rich, like milk chocolatey, like, It almost starts ranging into that like milky hot chocolate with marshmallows kind of flavor.
Yeah.
Minus the marshmallows, obviously. That's kind of a hard texture, I think, for tea to replicate, but
sticky, chewy. And this is actually the lower grade of this style of tea.
Sure.
There's the original amber red, which has the big bold texture. This one kind of falls flat compared to that one, but this one maintains that rich chocolatiness, and that's from a double roast. So like he like uses heat to help accelerate the oxidation process, and so it's during like the oxidation. They call it a roast. It's not a roast maybe of how you think of it in like Chinese tea processing terms, but it's a roast because heat is added during the oxidation process. So it's a very, very heavy oxidation, which you can see the color of the liquor is just rich. Almost looks
there is
like...
a bit of greenness to the leaves, though, still. At least a couple of the leaves that I've got have a little bit of greenness to them, but for the most part, yeah, this is a dark tea.
And that greenness is the difference between the baby amber red and the amber red, because the amber red has an additional step of oxidation, an additional roast. So he cuts a corner on this one to make it half the price. And so that's something that like I'm willing to compromise with the growers on if they want to make a tea that's more accessible. So that means that this baby amber red is something that's accessible to restaurants. This baby amber red is being served in several different restaurants. It's being served, this tea, this beautiful, beautiful tea is being served in the Virgin cruise lines.
Well, that's so cool.
Yeah. So, like it's a win when we can find a fit for these artisanal teas. But we're honest about it. It's not like we're trying to say, oh, this is the most premium one. It's like, no, there's one even more premium if you're interested. But
I mean, honestly though, like this one is still really quite nice regardless like of premium status. And I mean, I know that for one that you have definitely changed my opinion about how I look at smaller leaves, smaller, more broken leaves, right? And not say that these are smaller, more broken, but you
But
know,
they
like
are.
just
You're right. You're right. They are. They are.
yeah, but like they're not like you know like the Yankee Special where it's like you know
Mhm.
just like shreds almost by
Mhm.
the time you get it steeped. Um, but what I'm getting at is that like my idea of like quality and high quality and low quality leaves is definitely very different now than it used to be. Um, but regardless, I mean, there's still a richness to this, you know, that like is really nice. But what I really like about it, and especially that I'm glad that I'm noticing this, excuse me, since I'm bowl brewing, is just this lack of tannin, right?
Mhm.
And I mean that ratio is low for this bowl brew, but at the same time, like it's, I mean, it's been sitting in there for the last nearly, you know, 25 minutes at the very least. So like it's just goes to show that the tea has a lot of softness to it as well. So I don't know if that's a product of the processing. I don't know if it's a product of the terroir. Is the oxidation done exclusively for roast, or is it done through rolling as well? Or
Yeah, no, there's definitely rolling that
sure,
happens. Yeah, yeah, to shape and to also break down the cell walls. But no, that difference and lack of tannin, it really is in the attention to detail. It's not just terroir. Terroir
mm,
is like the baseline character of a tea. Terroir doesn't actually tell you much about how much tannin is going to be in it or not, because
right,
you could
right,
get tea from a really great terroir, like highly guarded terroir, and fuck it up and release a bunch of tannins and make it unbalanced, make it sour, make it astringent.
mm.
You know, so
It also depends on like the type of plant that you're growing as well. You know, so like there's so much that goes into that. I just
but you know, interplanting trees they've found has helped with that. And
really
yeah, because it's shading.
sure.
Shading helps with tannin, you know, inhibiting tannin production. So you know, there's certainly things that growers can do, but it's not inherently involved in the terroir that's going to,
Right.
um, you know, unless you keep it as an agroforestry. And so that's one of the reasons why agroforestry systems support better tea production, because there's more shade, there's more of a canopy that's protecting the tea. But then of course the tea is growing at a slower rate. So you know, there's all these decisions that a tea master has to make, and how they're going to weigh their options of maintaining quality versus trying to make a product that's going to fit with the market. And that's
Right.
what's really exciting for us as consumers, to understand our involvement in this whole process. That if the more we become educated and the more that we learn these things, you know, we can actively involve our opinion and our values around connoisseur products, to motivate the producers to make, you know, the decisions, right? Because before we had direct trade, before we had consumers directly interacting with farmers through social media, you know, like the farmers
Mhm.
didn't have any access to the consumer and knowing what the consumer actually wanted. Their only access to the market was like their local trading posts, be it the auctions, be it co-ops, or whatever infrastructure their local market has. And those are always price, 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 price. And so farmers just assume, okay, they're just going for price. But you know, now companies like mine, or just consumers, normal consumers on Instagram that are like sharing their opinions and interacting with farmers, is providing that insight of like, no, we actually do care about this attention to detail.
Sure.
And that will like motivate a farmer to be like, okay, so there is a market that's, you know, wanting to support, you know, this style of artisanal production.
Say it's kind of it's kind of like that, you know, honestly the only reason that certain businesses stay in business as well, people keep buying from them, right?
Yeah.
And like the only reason that like there's still a market for like this, like low quality tea that doesn't really serve the land that it comes from and the people that grow it, the only reason it still has a place in the market is because people still buy it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, just like you're saying, if more folks are more aware of what is available to them and have more access to kind of like you said, kind of shape that, yeah, that kind of that whole market kind of changes.
Hmm.
But these are my tea rantings.
Yeah, no, they're good. They're good. Bitcoin agrees.
Bitcoin usually agrees with me. I mean, why wouldn't he? Bitcoin and I are buds.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, it's been a while since I've had a tea from Nepal, and yeah, you're right though. The texture on this white forest is really what sells it, and it's really not something that I experienced. Like, yeah, I guess now that you say it, it does kind of remind me a little bit of Bai Mudan, but even Bai Mudan is not quite like this at
Yep.
all. This is
It's
something completely unique and on
it's
its
so
own.
unique. Yeah. So it's so unique. I don't know if I told you I briefly said the processing notes, but yeah, it's an earlier harvest tea. So this tea is really only produced in the spring. The really
Mm-hmm.
young, supple leaves, the smaller leaves, you can see in the size of the leaf used here. It's the smaller leaf sets when they're still very young. They are allowed to wither. Um, they uh, they do use withering beds, but this producer, the Barbote Tea Garden, he's using a very small scale. We've talked about withering before, the importance
Sure.
of having a very even layer. And his crew, they do pay attention to that detail. They don't overstack those withering beds. But it withers for a couple of hours, so they don't wither it to a very low moisture content. But then they do a roll, and the really good producers are doing the knee roll, kind of like the Taiwanese style, where they put it all on a cloth and they use their body weight in their knee to roll it.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Yep.
so it's
I've seen that actually. I literally think I saw that like the other day. That's
cool. Yeah, it's really cool.
absolutely wild that you mentioned that to me because I think
It's
I just saw a video of that for the first time.
in like Taiwan, when you meet a tea master, they're always happy to share that tidbit of history with you about how they used to roll their tea with their knees. Uh, Not done anywhere in Taiwan, because it's just way too much labor, and they have definitely innovated really great equipments to replicate that. But
Yeah, that's a novelty at this point if you find that.
but yeah, these teas are actually produced that way, because they still have
Hmm.
more accessible labor. A lot of the factories have not invested in all those equipments. Although you're going to see more and more of that, investment into higher technology. But yeah, so they roll it with their knees. It's only one roll. It's a pretty fast roll. So usually with the Taiwanese teas, traditionally, they would be doing that for a long time, right? Because like that
Well,
that
sure,
was
yeah.
to get like the compact ball roll that you're used to seeing from Taiwan. You'd have to use a lot of time and force to roll that. But they just do a very quick roll on it, and then it dries right away after that. And they dry it pretty quickly with the high temp. So there is a little bit of oxidation that comes out of it. I would say actually the process is probably very similar to what Alfredo does with his ruby white, except for Alfredo uses older leaf material, more mature leaf material than
Mm.
this. And that's not to say that if Alfredo started using younger, more supple leaf material, he would get a product like this. Like that is where terroir plays in. That's where a tea master needs to make the decision of like, okay, based on my terroir, this is the type of processing that's going to work, or this leaf plucking standard is going to be most ideal versus, I shouldn't just replicate. And there's a lot of that happening in like this
Sure.
artisanal specialty, tea making. environment, out of Sri Lanka. I think I see the most of it out of Sri Lanka. Tea producers are making fancy style teas. And they just try to exactly replicate what you can learn in like a tea encyclopedia about specialty tea from China or Taiwan. And they say, oh, this is a dragon well from Sri Lanka. Completely off. Completely off.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, that's because you're not meant to make that kind of tea. It's not ideal for your terroir. And for a lot of these
because this isn't dragon well.
Yeah. You're not using the same plant material. And sometimes these farmers will like invest money and they'll bring in the plant material. They'll bring things in. They'll say, oh, well, let's just, and it never exactly works. That's the thing that's interesting about nature is sometimes, really just have to give in. And so Nepal's been putting that work in the most of any country. India has certainly started to do that work. Mm-hmm. Sri Lanka has started to do that work, but Nepal was doing that work long ago. Like when I started, and I went to Nepal my first time was 2014. Sharad Subba is the maker. He runs the Haryali cooperative. The Baby Amber Red is his tea. He made this tea. He invented the White Forest, but he did not make this one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I met Sharad Subba in 2014. He was working for another factory. He had yet to have his own factory going on. He was working for a different factory. And he had already been doing this work for several years. In 2014, when I went to India, this work was brand new. We were having to introduce these concepts to people of like, hey, why don't you try making things from hand, making things in smaller batches, paying attention to details. We go to Nepal, and this White Forest was being made before any kind of intervention.
And they're doing it.
They were just doing it already, and so that's kind of a common theme. For instance, the last time I was in Darjeeling, was it the last time? Yeah, the last time I was there. It's been so many freaking years now because of this stupid virus. But the last time I was there, Kevin Gascoigne, who is very famous, he's known as Mr. Darjeeling. He introduced, artisanal Darjeeling to the tea world out of Montreal, Camellia sinensis. Got to give credit to him. He's an incredible leader for tea. He was in Darjeeling, very close to the Yankee Tea Factory when I was there. And I invited him and he came, and it was like a really big deal. And we like made a whole lineup, and actually my friends from Nepal came too, because I hit him up and I was like, hey, y'all should come. We have a really famous tea guy coming to the village. Y'all should come, bring your samples. Let's impress him. Let's impress him. And we did, and it was cool. It was such a special, cool experience. And he was able to call all the teas that were from Nepal and all the teas that were from Darjeeling, even though the terroir is the same. Plant material, exactly the same. Even age, probably the same. But he, with his experience, already knew that the small tea makers in Nepal have an advantage in that they've been struggling longer and they've been putting in the work longer to understand the terroir of their tea. So
that's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't have anything else to say about that other than just like that's kind of a cool thing to hear,
Yeah, it's definitely like one of the cooler things that's happened while I've been doing my tea traveling, and just to get that affirmation,
Sure.
and then a word for anybody else, I know we have a lot of small tea producers around the world that may be listening to this podcast and may be wondering, how do I jump into this? And I mean, there are consultants you could hire. You could have millions of dollars and hire those consultants, and you could fly out your plant material from wherever in the world. You can match your soil. You can, fix your soil. You can do all the things, pay all the money to do all the things. But ultimately, like, you're still going to have to put in that time. Right? And so that's why I recommend to people, it's like, don't invest that money. It's like, just put in that time. Put in that effort.
Put in the work, yeah.
Just do the work. Because there's...
It's about drive. It's about power. We stay hungry. We devour.
Good job, Colin. Good job.
Thank you. I was sitting here
Every
going,
episode we have to have a TikTok soundbite. It's just how it works.
I was sitting there going, am I gonna say it? Am I gonna do it? Yeah, just do it. Oh man. Well, regardless of anything, I love these teas.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, these teas love you too.
All tea loves everybody. I decided. No, but I mean, it's just this. There's a very just unique kind of like, oh my gosh, I got like some in my eye just now. I don't know what happened. But there's just like a unique kind of softness to these that I always kind of associate with teas from Nepal. And I've only had a few, but like of all of them, like they've all, kind of been comforting to return to, if that makes any sense. So, God damn it.
So I don't know. I guess we'll open it up. Anybody in chat has any questions about any of the things that we've talked about, or you have questions about the tea?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we only did one infusion on the tea. I'm not gonna waste these. I'm definitely gonna to drink these again. I know sometimes we go through multiple infusions to kind of take that journey, but
Well, when you bowl brew it, I mean, you're kind of doing multiple ones though too. So.
yeah, this tea is it's so good. It's got that aroma, but again, with Nepalese tea, it's really easy for all of them to have that aroma. But with the other ones, they fall flat on texture, and they're astringent, and they're sour. And it's like, yeah, you're not putting in that effort, investing the real estate, investing the resources into properly withering the teas, and maybe even the leaf material that's being used is not as attention to detail, because the laborers, which in Nepal, majority of Nepalese tea is being grown by small tea growers, independent small tea growers. Like you'll see some big factories, but those big factories, for the most parts, like they'll have a small garden to themselves, but are mostly,
and they're usually
sourcing from the small tea growers. Now there's co-ops, so like the Hariali tea here, this baby amber red, that is coming from a co-op, which are all independent small tea growers, but they all own the factory together. They all own the business together.
They say, don't they all kind of farm independently, kind of pool their material together to kind of split the profits from what's being made?
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, and I haven't made my final verdict on how I feel personally, like as a international development professional and business person, how I feel about the efficacy of those, because the ideal of them is great. The ideal of a co-op is great.
Sure.
But the thing that I've realized is that, like, you can have this great intention, you can create this amazing camaraderie and community around all of these, like, small business owners to collaborate, but if they're all facing the same oppressions and challenges that those big factories are facing, they're going to be making similar decisions for themselves.
Yeah, and who really gets ahead in that situation?
Yeah, they can't. So, I mean, I haven't gotten updated numbers, and of course I haven't been to Nepal in like 3 years now because of this virus, but the last time that I was there and I was learning about co-ops, they described the structure to me and the idealism of it, and then I asked, because I know how it works in the conventional factories, like how much they pay small tea growers for their leaf. It's not much. But then when I asked the co-op people how it works, they said, okay, well, because we're not making profit from day one and we've all had to kind of invest to launch this co-op off the ground, we've all agreed to pay a really low price for the leaf until we get up. And the intention is that it's going to be a very short period of time when the members have to sacrifice and get paid, significantly less than what they'd get paid.
Short-term sacrifice for long-term gain.
Yeah. And at this point, I think the co-op had already been in business for like 7 or 8 years. And I asked them, okay, so have you passed that period? Like, how much are you paying? And they have not been
Sure.
able to increase the price. They're still sacrificing. And so, like, it makes me think, well, that's kind of dumb and sucks because, conventionally through the the centralized factory business, the government can hold them accountable. Although in Nepal, there's a lot of stories of the government not having that facility of regulating it. So there's a lot of stories going around in the industry of these larger factories, including some factories that you may know yourself personally, that like are going over a year without paying the growers. Like they continue to receive the shipments of leaf and then not paying. And the government's supposed to regulate that and get in the middle of it, but they don't really have that facility to do that, the infrastructure to do that.
So I think the common story and plight of the tea, coffee, and spice industry has always been just lack of any form of regulation, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, that's kind of a challenge, and um, with the co-ops though, they kind of get away with it because they say, oh well, these are our members, they all own the business and we all agreed to
Sure.
pay ourselves this. And it's like, well, when are you going to get ahead? How are you going to get ahead? And how are you going to get over this bump? So that's kind of the challenge, and that's why I haven't really like fully dove into the concept of co-ops being the solution, because I haven't heard of one being empowering yet.
Heard of
Maybe
some making good tea, maybe.
well, and the thing is that they make it for like 1 year, and then the next year they don't
They're
ever
doing
make.
something else.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because the buyers come and the buyers are like, well, hey, next season I want 20 times more tea. And, which for them is like a lot of money. And they're like, oh, you're going to bring all that cash to us? And they're like, yeah, we'll bring the cash to you. But then,
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it never ends up being beneficial for them. And they end up cutting corners, and then that affects like their overall operation in the factory.
mm.
Hey, everybody. J Noon, Esu. Esu.
Well,
How's it going?
I don't know. Unless you've got another thing, I think that's a pretty good place to end the episode right there. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think the timing was good. We should be able to get like
Yeah.
a little 45 doodad there, 45-minute doodad. I
That one was
didn't,
fun.
yeah, I didn't get any questions in my chat. Although we do have viewers, Reddit, we have people sitting here. Someone did comment on your snowball mic, but
It's a nice mic.
I don't know. I mean, maybe it was a complimentary comment, but it just says snowball mic. So.
Yeah, I mean, snowball mic gang like sticks together. Like we
Oh, I see.
we
Okay,
really,
cool.
yeah. Well, it's actually like honest to God though, it is a really nice mic. Like it takes no setup. This one, like this model has like some pattern switches on it, so you've got like a fake phantom power thing for some reason, a cardioid pattern capture pattern and an omni capture pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can switch between them. It's just a plug and play USB, and this thing,
Hey,
this
Leah,
one
good to
specifically
see
is like
you.
15 years old and is still
Good to see
working.
you, Leia.
So,
Esu, how you doing?
but anyway,
Cool, man. I stopped my audio recording. I'm still streaming, but yeah, we don't need any outro or anything, right? We're good.
No,
Drink
you're
more
good.
tea from Nepal.
Just drink
Believe
more
in
tea,
Nepal.
but definitely drink more tea from Nepal.
Expect more from your tea from Nepal.
Expect more from your tea period too. Don't settle. No more settling for bad tea. Too many people I know settle for bad tea.
Yeah, no more settling. No settling on anything in life, not just the tea, but like I think tea is a really great product to focus on. Okay, like hey, I'm gonna like start holding these very high principles and these very high boundaries and these very high values around this one product. That could be a cool activity to kind of teach you how to do that, and then you can start applying it to other parts of your life.
Well, I think that, the thing that I always say is that what we like to forget in our Western
Leia, I'm
world
really
is
sorry to
that
hear
just like
that. I'm sorry for Grandma.
with things that we hold dear
Thanks for being
here
here.
in our culture, like there have been like
I'm just finishing
wars
here with my
fought
friend.
over tea and like political just fallout completely over tea. There's been like serious trade routes that are still in existence today that were forged for tea. So it's like it deserves a bit of reverence just as much as we give to things in our world. We just kind of forget about that because, oh haha, Earl Grey tastes like orange.
Oh, but
I'm just saying.
orange pico is my favorite flavor.
Oh my gosh, I love the orange pico flavor.
We're such trolls.
That was me once. I can't lie.
We're such
At least it's
trolls.
been a pleasure, though.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. I hope you get a good rest tonight, and
Yeah,
yeah, enjoy your 2022.
you as well. I'll
Thank
see you
you.
next week, if not sooner, and I'll
Yeah,
have some episodes to you soon.
yeah. Look forward to drinking some tea with you next week, man.
Later.
Later, Gator. All right.